Alright guys, just wanted to talk for a few minutes about something that's been kind of scratching at my brain lately. And as far as the title of this video goes, it's not that Steve Albini doesn't have a lot of lucid moments. I'm sure most of his moments are lucid, but I just thought it'd be a fun way to title it by being a little extra specific. It kind of casts doubt on his mental faculties. It's kind of a fun game to play with language. Yeah, a lot of ways it can be manipulated for disinformation, even without outright lying. Yeah, probably one of the reasons that language should be wiped off the face of the earth once and for all, but it'll be a while before we can get to that. And besides, that goes contrary to what I wanted to talk about today anyways, which was music as a language, so to speak. And the reason I was talking about Steve Albini had to do with an interview I saw of his recently, where he was asked about why there's been this kind of change from the prior preference towards rock music, guitar-focused music, towards electronic music, and if artists in the electronic genres, I guess if you want to put it that way, are doing the same things as was done in rock. And he made a lot of good points with regard to that. Basically, it seemed like he kind of hinted that it was mostly a generational thing. If you've grown up with electronic music, that's what you're going to be familiar with, and that's what you as an artist are more likely to work with. And that seems like that's probably true in many cases. But it got me to wondering about those of us who prefer guitar-based music, if that's just a generational thing, or if there's anything to the guitar specifically and rock music in general that is possibly preferential, that we could say is maybe objectively better. I don't know. I guess the one thing that I have to say about that is that electronic music versus certain other kinds, guitar music in particular, since that's what I'm most familiar with, seems like a clumsier tool to use, because the purpose of music is to convey your ideas or possibly human emotion. In fact, usually that's what's trying to be conveyed. And it seems like the guitar is uniquely adapted to do that. There's other very versatile instruments like pianos and harps and so forth, but even those don't quite seem to be able to speak the way the guitar can. This is important. I was kind of researching some stuff on this briefly, and I came across an article by a gentleman named Joel Kruger. He's at the University of Exeter there in the UK. He had an article on musical manipulations on the emotionally extended mind. And the emotionally extended mind. And that's what I was thinking about with guitar music and this emotionally extended mind. It's a lot easier to make that direct connection than with electronic music. At least that seems to be what I'm hearing. He noted that a skilled musician uses her instrument to summon and work through the nuance of an emotional episode. He says, our capacity to perceive and respond to musical stimuli involves many of the same brain regions and physiological responses involved in the production and experience of emotions. So, according to his studies, it seems like, I guess this is kind of obvious, anybody who's been moved by a piece of music, that yes, our emotions and music are connected. And of course, the robotic overtones of electronic music, I would say, distracts from that. I would be interested to know if there's anybody attempting to make really emotional music with electronics. I suppose with touch pads and pitch wheels and things, there's probably a way to bend notes, make them cry, so to speak, as guitarists can do. Like I'm just wondering if is there the electronic equivalent of like a BB King or something like that. It'd be cool to see if there is. And yeah, this just comes down to what I was saying earlier about language, speech, expressing ourselves. If we're trying to communicate with someone, the closer we can do it to a face-to-face with our own voice, the better. I mean, yeah, we can, send a text message. We could send the same message via Morse code, but is it going to have the same emotional response on the listener? Probably not, even though the content of the message might be exactly the same. I was wondering too why especially distorted guitar has such a pleasing sound to so many of us, because that is sort of a modern thing. There is, dissonance and things like that in classical music, but not to that extent. I have a feeling that it somehow just hits a certain sweet spot of dissonance while the guitar is still in tune, so it's being musical, but it just has that extra bit of dissonance to it that which is totally artificial, but somehow it seems pleasing to the modern mind. I'm not exactly sure why that is. So that's about all I had to say about that. Yeah, just kind of a question about the medium, how that affects communication versus like an electronic music medium versus an analog medium, guitar versus, I don't know, MIDI, computerized sounds. Just breaking it into that subcategory. There's oil painting, sculpture, things like that. So obviously music in and of itself is a medium, but then within that there's different mediums that we can use. And that got me to thinking about that saying that the medium is the message, which turns out that was coined by a fellow by the name of Marshall McLuhan. I'm not real familiar with his stuff. I've heard his name bandied about from time to time, but he wrote a book called Understanding Media, The Extensions of Man, which is exactly what we're doing when we're creating music, right? We're using media to extend ourselves. And that's where he came up with this phrase that the medium is the message. Or actually, he said the medium is the massage, because he liked to play around with words, which kind of kicks back to my poking a little jab there at Steve Albini. By doing that, it captures people's attention, and even though the content isn't exactly correct, it gets the message across. I think if I'm understanding from my brief foray into his world, I definitely have to read this book though, and I'll get back to you with some thoughts on that when I do. But yeah. So how that applies exactly to electronic versus rock music, I'll have to give some more thought to that. If there's a way of making an apples to apples comparison of either one of those mediums being the medium itself being the message. To some extent with over-the-top rock music, I think it kind of is, regardless of what the actual melody or lyrics are. Yeah, that distorted sound, it has that rebellious, excited, energetic message encoded within it, I guess. I don't know if it comes across that way as much now as it initially did when it came on the scene. And as for electronic music, I don't know, a message of maybe fun, progress, things like that. I don't know. Anyways, we'll add that to the endless list of things I don't know, I guess. So yeah, just some muddled thoughts that I wanted to share with you today, and maybe you can rearrange them in your own mind in some cogent way that makes logical sense. But I just wanted to put that grab bag of thoughts on the medium of music out there for your consideration. Anyways, have a great one.